Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass podcast. I'm your host, Jack Foster, joined alongside Ryan Schumpert, as always, coming at you on a Monday evening, recapping Tennessee baseball's 2-1 weekend in Arlington after Tennessee beat Virginia Tech, Arizona State, and lost to UCLA as part of the Amity Bank College Baseball Series down there in Globe Life Field. RTI was boots on the ground as I just got back from Arlington a little less than 24 hours ago. Lots to get into as Tennessee, bounced back nicely after a loss to open the weekend with a pair of good wins over Power 4 opponents. But first, Ryan, how we doing?
Doing well. Especially we got the Amity Bank College Baseball Series behind us, which is just I hate typing it every single year, however many times. It's always some version of that. Shriners Children Hospital. Do I type Shriners Hospital, Shriners Children, college series or classic or whatever. So glad not to type about it anymore, and glad that it was, I think, good for both for Tennessee. I think it was good for Tennessee, but also good for us from a falling standpoint. Tennessee drops series to Kent State, and it's like, let's throw Tennessee in the fire right after that. Let's see how they can bounce back against what's going to be their toughest competition of non-conference play. So I think we learned more about this Tennessee team last weekend, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah, usually in years past, these neutral site tournaments early in the year have been when we first know what this team looks like, because the non-conference scheduling outside of that is typically very easy. Tennessee just blows opponents out of the water, but this year that's not the case. Kent State, a very good MAC team, and beats Tennessee in a series, and it's like, oh, this team is flawed. Now it has something to prove going into this neutral site weekend, in this case Arlington, this past weekend. And we'll get into what Tennessee did prove or the worries we still have about the team. It was largely uncompetitive against UCLA, had a great inning to suddenly make it a game, but then it all, fell apart to snap of the fingers after that, as UCLA had 6th, 7th inning runs after Tennessee's 4 spot in the 6th. Wasn't a game after that, but Tennessee with 2 low-scoring wins in back-to-back days to follow, one being against a good Arizona State team that had started the season red hot, had been a surprise nationally in the college baseball world, and then beat a Virginia Tech team that isn't great. Thought Tennessee probably should have beat them by more, and that gives, a talking point to how poor the offense and inconsistent the offense has been this season. But Ryan, the big positive takeaway, and really the big takeaway overall on the weekend for me with this Tennessee team, is that the pitching was amazing for the most part, and specifically in the last 2 days, and even more specifically, the bullpen pitching was the strength, and it carried Tennessee to these Saturday and Sunday wins.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, look, in some ways, this is kind of what I expected it to look like. I thought the pitching was good. I thought they had a good bullpen. And I don't think I thought the offense was going to struggle the way they've struggled at this point in the season, but I didn't think this was going to be some world-beating offense either. So, I guess that was my takeaway one. Like, I think what they showed the final 2 games, it's like, that's how it needs to be. Like, that's how they're going to need to win games. It's not going to have to be 3-1. You don't have to hold the opponent to 1 or 2 runs to win every game, but Tennessee they have a good pitching staff. They need to pitch well. They need to play good defense behind them. They proved they can do that. I don't think they proved that they're some great defensive team or anything like that, but they played 2 pretty clean baseball games. A couple caught stealings in there. Like, it was a plus in those 2 games. And again, it's not like the offense is going to score 2 or 3 runs every game, but Tennessee's going to need to win a lot of games scoring 5 or 6 runs, I think, this season if they're going to win games. So that to me, this is kind of what it's going to need to look like. And we'll talk about this more when we get into the offense. I think if it was a Lindsey Nelson Stadium, Tennessee would have scored more runs last weekend. I think Levi Clark especially would have benefited from that. But a good weekend for Tennessee, especially after not just the fact that they lost on Friday, but they did play such poor defense and the game did get away from them late. I think it was an important and, stabilizing bounce back for Tennessee to get the 2 wins on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. It was a jarring collapse there right after Tennessee had made it a game. against UCLA, which is the #1 team in the country, of course.
And they looked every part of it this weekend.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us really expected Tennessee to beat at UCLA, given the fact that Tennessee had lost to Kent State. But yeah, just the way it happened was troublesome, and like you said, the poor defense. Henry Ford bouncing back with 2 smooth days at third. Ariel Antigua turns a amazing double play late Sunday to really help Braden Krenzel out, and yeah, it was just a good fundamental baseball. Didn't hit the ball well, but good fundamentals. And Tennessee can't afford to have bad fundamentals with this offense this year. So this is kind of like needed to see this. Let's start with the starting pitching. We'll kick it off with Tegan Kuhns, who you could make an argument he threw the best he has all season at times in the UCLA start. He gave up 3 home runs, but he had 10 strikeouts, a career high. So it was either strikeout or homer pretty much in this game. UCLA tipped the cap. They have tremendous lineup, and that Gasparino dude, no clue why he's hitting 8th. He has 8 homers on the year. He's a stud, former Texas Longhorn. But, Tegan Kuhns made a very, very good lineup look silly on some occasions with his breaking ball, especially late. Was blowing the heater by him early. And, the final line, I think, doesn't look incredible. But if you watched the game, like you saw a very dynamic pitcher who had it working for the majority of his outing.
Yeah, I saw it from one scout, and I can't remember who it was today on Twitter. It was like, Tegan Kuhns has moved up our board into a projected first-round pick after what we've seen so far this season, and especially what he did against UCLA, how much better his off-speed stuff looks, and still being able to pump that fastball in consistently 95, 96 throughout a game. So, yeah, I don't – his numbers certainly weren't great, but he gave up 6 hits. 2 of them were doubles. 3 of them were home runs. I don't have the stat in front of me. A lot of 2-out base, RBI hits, a lot of damage with 2 outs. His defense didn't always do him favors at times, either behind him. So the stuff you saw why he's so highly thought of, because the stuff held up against an elite UCLA offense. And, I don't think if Tennessee's playing in a super regional and Tegan Kuhns has this type of outing, I think we would be talking about it differently, because we'd be talking more about the mistakes that he did make and that UCLA did punish, which you got to give a bunch of credit to UCLA too. But when you're talking about just a early sample size, first big test, like, he looked the part of what an SEC Friday night guy looks like.
Yeah. And you look at how these runs happen sometimes for UCLA. Second inning, RBI double only happened because the Henry Ford error, which allowed a 2-out base runner. Third inning with 2 outs, Rock Chalowski, their one of their better players, his double down the left field line, like off the bat, it looked like it was going to be foul. It just stayed fair. It was down the line the whole time. So it was a little bit of an unlucky hit. It wasn't just absolutely smoked, right? And then a 2-run homer right after Chalowski's at bat. The 7th inning homer by Gasparino was after Tennessee had scored 4 in the 6th, and Tegan Kuhns was waiting forever. I was surprised to see him even go back out there, gives up a leadoff homer, and that's it. So there was a little bit of unfortunate circumstances for him here and there. Again, a base runner reached in the 5th, which ended up scoring due to some small ball from UCLA. Also, a passed ball allowed that runner to get to third to set up a sac fly. So there was at least 3 defensive mistakes right there. 2 from Ford and 1 from Stone that, led to UCLA scoring 2 runs, and then a little bit of unfortunate circumstances in the 3rd led to 2. So if you really were to dissect this outing, I think it's far better than the numbers indicate, as we've been saying. And I feel better about Tegan Kuhns as a Friday night ace for Tennessee after this outing, even though he gave up 5 extra base hits or 3 homers, 2 doubles.
Yeah, and I think, you'd probably have a better feel for this being there, but like, it didn't feel like it felt like he handled adversity well, I guess. Like, he just kept competing. He didn't shy away. Whereas last year, and I don't know how much of it I would say Tegan just wasn't doing that, but there certainly was not a whole lot of confidence from the coaching staff, from Tony and Frank, and his ability to push through adversity and get through jams and get back into a groove where, it just felt like he kind of the old coaching cliche in football, just play the next play. That's kind of how it felt like. Teagan, I don't think it didn't feel like his confidence wavered a whole lot, and he just kept on going out there and competing. And again, wasn't statistically the best outing, but he gets through 6 innings, and he at the very least ate a lot of outs for Tennessee to allow their bullpen to be fresher the rest of the weekend.
Well, you talk about weathering the storm and battling adversity. No pitcher has done that better to me this year than Landon Mack. And he did that again Saturday. Gives up 7 hits, but only 2 runs. Strikes out 5, so a little bit lower strikeout numbers than he's had this year. Pitch count was high, so only a 5-inning outing through 93 on the day. But again, straining a bunch of runners throughout his outing, as he's done every single week, it seems. He'll give up some hits. His command has been great this year, but he never really lets things spiral, and and he'll celebrate when he gets out of innings. As we've seen, his fire is something that has been apparent and very needed to me for this Tennessee team, because no one else has really had that this year, and it's been such a cornerstone, a staple of Tennessee baseball teams that I think is largely missing. Mac has it, and it's such it's great for this team to have a guy like that to go out there and compete, because look, he's not the most talented guy in the world. He's not really, I'm not a big baseball scout or anything, but like Tegan Kuntz is far more talented than Landon Mack, but Mack he's going to be able to go out there and compete against SEC teams this year because of his mentality and that dog, factor to him. And that was on display in Arizona State. It kept them off the board in a lot of situations when it looked like he wasn't going to be able to. I look at the third inning, back-to-back Ks to strand runners on the corners some runners on second and third. He did a good job in the fourth again to strand the bases loaded that time. So I don't know how much you watched of the Arizona State game, but Landon Mack has just done this all year.
Yeah, he has, and that was when I was able to watch the whole thing. Shout out to Game Times this week. It was good compared to basketball. And I was trying to find a quote that I had from the story when I talked to him this summer, and I don't know why I'm struggling to find the article. But essentially, he, to your swagger point, he said, when I asked, about why Tennessee, essentially, it was like, Tony Vitello, I'm very aligned with him and how I see the game of baseball, and like how the program is how I want to be. So it very much, that'll be something that's just interesting to watch long term. Elander does not have that same bravos that Tony does.
Right.
And I don't think Josh Elander is trying to put the reins on anybody. I don't think Josh Elander is trying to take that away from Landon Mack, but it's just a classic, a team is going to take the personality of their coach. So that's a tangent and a conversation for another day. But that did make me think of it when you said that Landon Mack's one of the only guys that's had that. And that was something that he specifically pointed out when I talked to him after he committed. But yeah, he just worked through trouble relatively consistently, but it didn't feel like he gave up a ton of hard contact. Even though he was in trouble a lot, it didn't ever feel like things were about to get away from him, I guess. Not that it didn't feel like Arizona State couldn't put a few runs on him or anything like that. Felt possible, throughout the game, but it just never felt like things were. There was never a point where I was like, "Is somebody warming? They better be getting somebody ready in the pen quickly." Even when he worked in trouble, it just felt like he was gonna be fine and be able to get out of it.
Yeah, and it was the bases loaded situation there in the fourth. That was the big one where it was a single walk hit by pitch, and it's like, oh, Max command's going away a little bit. Then induces a ground out to their 2-hole hitter to get out of the inning. That was a huge moment, and then bounces back on 1, 2, 3 in the fifth. He went back out there and did really well. So, yeah, I just think he's eaten a lot of innings for Tennessee this year. He's kept them in games. He, unfortunately for him, got the loss against Kent State in a 2-1 game, and the 2 runs scored by Kent State were because of a Henry Ford error. So he's really been dynamite all year, and I think you have to feel good about him. Third and final starting pitcher to talk about here is, of course, Evan Blanco, who had a solid outing. He cruised, for the vast majority of it, but again, the command seems to be a little bit of an issue with him. Josh Elander has talked about how he, of course, has confidence that's going to stop for Blanco. He just hasn't had his best stuff in the last 2 weeks. Hits 3 batters against Virginia Tech. Walks 1, strikes out 6, and only allows 2 hits one run, which was a solo homer. So, I mean, Virginia Tech didn't seem like a good baseball team this weekend in Arlington. Got pretty much dominated by A&M and Miss State, and then couldn't hit against Tennessee. Granted, Tennessee couldn't hit against Virginia Tech, so it ended up being a close game. But I don't know how good Virginia Tech is, but it was good to see Evan Blanco have a start like this to where, he's pretty much on cruise control for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you look at this, just the box score, the stat line. It's like if you don't work your way all the way down to the very end where the hit by pitches are, you're like, man, he was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like, oh my gosh, here we go again. He hits the first batter of the game. Now, granted, 3-1 count. So if there's ever
Yeah.
time to hit a
Doesn't
batter,
matter.
it's with 3 balls.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he was steady. Like I'd like to see him be in the strike zone more. I'd like to see him avoid the hit batters because I don't think he's going to be as overpowering as his strikeout numbers looked the first 2 weeks, and even really is 6 strikeouts and 5 1/3 is good too. I don't know if it's going to look like that consistently in SEC play, but for the guy that probably looked the shakiest in Tennessee's rotation through 2 weeks, he threw the ball well against greater competition. Again, it's also the easiest competition of the weekend, so how much stock to put in it, I'm not sure. But also a game when Tennessee didn't provide him a whole lot of offensive support, so it wasn't like
Yeah.
Tennessee got up 8-0 and he was just kind of able to cruise and not worry about stuff. It was when guys were on base when he was in the game, it felt like high intensity moments of like Tennessee, can't allow a big inning, can't allow a crooked number. So definitely a good outing from him.
Yeah, only allowed 2 base runners at the same time once, and it was in the inning he left, the 6th. 1 out single and hit by pitch, his third and final. Mark Indy gets him out of the inning with 2 massive outs. But, Evan Blanco, we'll see. I'm kind of in a wait and see period with him. I don't know how he's going to do against SEC competition, but, he's got the experience to back him up. He pitches to contact well. It's just the command. Once it's better, if it's better, I think he'll be fine. But it's still a little bit of a monitoring situation right now.
Yeah, he feels like in my eyes, like a guy to, hopefully get 2 times through the lineup. I don't think you're
Yeah,
going to want to let him face SEC lineups the 3rd time, but go
yeah.
2 times through the lineup, pitch, 4 and change, 5 and change, and allow 2 runs or something like that. That's, on Sundays in the SEC, that's a pretty solid recipe to, at the very least, be keeping you in games, if not, allowing you to get out to a lead in the first half of the game.
In the bullpen, Tennessee was money on Saturday and Sunday, not Friday whatsoever. Brendan Arvidsson struggled. Freshman arms that Tennessee threw at the game out of hand struggled. But if you look at Saturday and Sunday, 2 bullpen arms apiece each day were really, really good. And I want to start with Saturday arms, specifically the guy who got the save, who looks to be a freshman phenom potentially for Tennessee this year, and that's Cameron Appenzeller, the big lefty. Comes in the 8th inning. It's a close game, 1-run game, 4-3. Kicks off the 8th inning and allows 2 one-out base runners with a walk and a single, bunt single, which was beautifully executed, by the way, by that Arizona State player, Dean Toigo. But then strikeout, fly out to get out of it, and then 1, 2, 3 in the 9th to earn the save and end the thing. Tennessee was up 2 runs going into the bottom of the 9th. So Cameron Appenzeller looks to be a guy Tennessee really needs right now, and if he can perform this way, he's going to be one of the better, armed not only for Tennessee but for in the SEC. He just seems to be an uber talented freshman as we expected, but I think with the role he could have, it could be even more than what we expected and even more important for this Tennessee bullpen.
No doubt, completely agree. Arvidsson struggles on Friday. I'm not worried about him. So I don't think you can even say, Cameron Appenzeller's probably been Tennessee's best bullpen pitcher. I guess what I'm getting at. He would still be number 2 in my trust rankings behind Arvidsson, but he's moved up that list. I was high on him. We talked about him we had him in the circle of trust in the bullpen entering the season, but you didn't know how good he was going to be, and he's certainly looked great so far. I think the thing that I almost circle with him is I just expect struggles are going to come at some point in SEC play. Very rarely do we see a freshman on the mound or, at the plate just be dominant through SEC play. When those struggles come, can he make the adjustments needed and push past that, because him doing that, I think, is going to be really important to the success of this Tennessee team, because it's just clear that he's oozing with talent and can be one of Tennessee's best, most trusted pitchers.
Yeah, and it's a guy who can do multiple different things out of the bullpen too.
Yeah.
He can start. Like if Tennessee desperately needed him to start, he could. So there's that. There's also, I feel like he could come in and while this was a 2 inning save, I think he could do a 1 inning save situation and be got to come out of the bullpen and be nails in a late game spot. Or he could be extended relief. I feel like he can do a lot of things. I mean, we've already seen him throw 55 plus pitches in an outing this year, the midweeker. So I think he's a do-it-all guy for Tennessee out of the bullpen. Ultimately, if I had to bet, I would say he only throws once on the weekend, whereas I think Frederick and Arvidsson, if they play it right, definitely Mark Hindy will throw multiple times.
Yeah.
Appenzeller strikes me as a guy to probably just throw once, but it can be in a variety of different situations.
Yeah, it can be stretched out one. Whereas Hindy and Frederick are going to be multiple guys because they're kind of specialists. Hindy's a lefty specialist. Frederick is a guy Josh Ehlinger's talked about can get hot, very quickly and get in a pinch, kind of the Kirby Cannell of the staff, and in that way, and with the funky arm slot, try to get some ground balls and spots like that. So yeah, I agree. It's what just saying that right there, like that's what I've liked about this bullpen. I think they have some super talented guys, and then I also think they have some, different type of specialists, and just they have a variety of looks that I think if it's played right, if they're used right, it can be a very effective bunch.
Yeah, and Brady Frederick was the pitcher to throw before Appenzeller in that close win over Arizona State. Did really great work in 2 innings of his own. Relieved Landon Mack to begin the bottom of the 6th inning, and got faced the minimum thanks to a caught stealing. It was Stone Lawless's first of the year. Really great throw to get the second out of a strike him out, throw him out situation there in the 6th, and then sack fly in the 7th is how Arizona State scored their 3rd run. But that was because of a throwing error by Stone Law. So followed up Scott Stealing with a defensive mistake. But overall, Brady Frederick threw really well. And outside of the nickel series he has this year, I think he's going to be a guy Tennessee leans on, like we're saying, in a couple of different situations. But Ryan, if I were to lump him in with Mark Hindy, who got 2 crucial outs against his only 2 batters against Virginia Tech, and Braden Krenzel, who got the 3-inning save against Fall Tech, which relief appearance of those 3 stuck out to you the most?
I think probably Krenzel, because he'd struggled so much against Kent State. He'd struggled in the preseason, and he had some good outings before Kent State, so it's not like it's just been straight struggles, but he hadn't looked – I didn't feel great about him entering the weekend, and I was a little nervous when they put him in, to be honest with you, and for him to not only – pitch a good inning, to pitch 3 good innings and get through it. I think that's a good sign. And, I think you add him to the mix of, like, I think his role is, I don't think he can do quite as many things as Appenzeller, but when we're talking about Appenzeller being a guy they're going to use one time in the weekend, probably for multiple innings, like 2-3 innings, like that's what Krenzel's role would be too. It's from the right-handed side. So, he's, I think, just a super important piece for this Tennessee bullpen, and we've seen it. We saw him have success in the SEC as a freshman last year. Was it mono? I think it was mono that he had that kept him out for a couple weeks, and he never really quite got back into the groove after that. So he's an important arm, and he was, again, it was a tight game for 3 innings when he was in there. It was all very high stakes stuff. And a game, the tone of this conversation would be very, very different if Braden Krenzel did not have a good outing and Tennessee lost that game 5-3 against the Virginia Tech team that did not look very good. The first 2 games of the weekend. So he's the one that I think would stood out the most to me, just because I think in a lot of ways he's so important for this bullpen, and I think he's probably most critical to Tennessee getting that final win of the weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned your, nerves with him going in. I felt the same way, and especially after he allowed 2 base runners in his first inning, right? A leadoff single, gets a K, but then a 4-pitch or a 5-pitch walk to put 2 runners on. It's like, oh gosh, this could not be good for Tennessee. We saw what Krenzel did against Kent State. Ariel turns that double play, like I mentioned earlier, and then the 8th and 9th inning, 6 up, 6 down for Krenzel to slam the door, and that was great. One of the better performances we've seen from Krenzel in a Tennessee uniform. More important ones for sure, as like you said, Tennessee dropped this game due to bullpen arm, kind of blowing it at the end and offense struggling once again. We'd be having an entirely different conversation, not only about Krenzel, but about everything. So it really was important, this outing for Krenzel to Tennessee.
Yeah, no doubt. Anything else pitcher-wise we need to hit before Bo Rudy?
No, that's where I was going next. Last pitcher
Perfect.
knows just that he didn't throw. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to go out of order on you. I'm going to loop this into previewing next week. Not that we usually take a super long look at it, but I do think it works out well for Tennessee. I was surprised Bo Rudy didn't throw. I know he didn't have a good outing on Friday against Kent State. Bounced back with a better outing. I believe that was on Sunday against Kent State.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it was a surprise to me that he didn't throw. Some of that, like if the UCLA game was competitive, he would have thrown this weekend. Tennessee kind of, once they fell behind big, was using some younger arms. They were a little bit lower on the totem pole. But 5 games for Tennessee this week. They got ETSU on Tuesday, Oakland on Wednesday. And just because of that, and because there's 5 games, Tennessee's going to have to use some of their main pitchers. Obviously not their weekend starters, but they're going to have to use main pitchers in the midweek. And ETSU constantly gives Tennessee good games. They beat Tennessee in Knoxville last year. Brady Frederick was a big part of that win. And we know Tennessee's offense doesn't have a lot of explosiveness. So, like, I circled that Tuesday game. Like, that's gonna be a tough game for Tennessee. They need to find a way to win. I think it works out. Yeah, Bo Rudy fresh. You have Brandon Arvidsson, who hasn't thrown since Friday. If it's me, I'm starting Brandon Arvidsson. I'm throwing him 2 or 3 innings, and I'm going to Bo Rudy for 2 or 3 innings.
Oh, wow. Not messing around.
I'm not messing around. And I'm give Blaine Brown to start on Wednesday against Oakland. And, it's kind of normal midweek role. But I'm going straight to the horses on Tuesday if I'm Josh Nylander. Especially I'd definitely start Arvidsson because I think he could start for this team at some point. And I would want to see him in that role. And then if you want to go to somebody between him and Rudy, that's fine. But I'd be giving Rudy multiple innings against the Buccaneers on Tuesday night.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, like you said, Tennessee lost to him last year, and Wednesdays is the traditional midweeker, right? Like, I don't think Oakland's putting any fear into Tennessee. So you throw the freshman, start Blaine Brown, the opener, and go through the motions. But Tuesday's one you don't want to drop. I was trying to find the exact quote that Nylander had on Rudy, but basically it's what you'd expect, is that situationally it just didn't end up making sense. Friday's game got out of hand. Appenzeller and Frederick threw so well Saturday. You wanted to keep Cameron out there in the 9th, and then Krenzel the same way. I thought they could have gone to Rudy in the 8th inning against Virginia Tech because Krenzel had kind of run into a jam there, and Rudy was down there tossing. It's obviously wasn't an injury situation. But then Krenzel rolls in the 8th. They throw him back out there. He rolls in the 9th. But Rudy was next. Like, if Krenzel had, I think, even allowed a single base runner in the 9th, say a leadoff single or walk, I think they would have made a change. But that's just kind of how the cookie crumbled on the weekend.
Yeah, which credit to Krenzel for how good he kind of took the ball out of Rudy's hands. And, I'm sure it's disappointing for Bo that happened on this past weekend, but now he'll get, it's good for Tennessee because he'll be fresh and be able to get a lot of run in a game that, could be tougher on Tuesday night.
Well, Tennessee scored 13 runs on the weekend and had scored 4+ in 2 of those innings. So 8 runs in 2 innings, 5 in all the others. You do the math. So really 2 big innings told the story of 2 games, right? For Tennessee's offense. 4 runs in the 6th against UCLA ultimately didn't matter, but I thought it was great to see Tennessee fight back after getting dominated for 5 innings, like just nothing offensively against UCLA's pitching. And then Saturday it happened early, which I think was even better for it to happen early because Tennessee came out, responded well from the loss. Granted, Tennessee didn't do much for the rest of the game, only 1 run via sac fly in the 9th, but to see that hot start I thought was important. Sunday was the most disappointing day because, they got a couple of runs, they got 2 runs in the 6th and 1 in the 3rd, but they didn't really do anything offensively. It was such a short and straightforward game, this 3-1 ball game between Tennessee and Virginia Tech. It was Like, when is something going to happen? And nothing really ever happened. And then Tennessee just won 3-1. That was how it went. But do you have any big overarching takeaway from this Tennessee offense? I think it has to be that it's still a work in progress. There's a couple of guys that maybe hit the ball better, that you feel a little bit better about, some maybe a little worse. But I'm just curious if you had something that you're really wanting to talk about here.
Yeah, no, not really anything that just crazy stands out. I think the one thing I would say, and look, it sounds like Blake Grimmer and Garrett Wright might be getting back this week, but
Yeah.
felt like pre that. We'll see if that changes the element at all. But kind of feels like they found their guys. They started 10 guys in 3 games. The same 9, now different batting order, couple different positions tinkered with on Friday and Saturday. And then when, give Stone Lawless a blow on Sunday, Levi Clark slides to catcher, Newstrom the first, and Ariel gets the nod as that first guy off the bench. But it feels like they kind of have their go-to 9, their go-to guys right now. And then again, we'll see if Blake Grimmer and Garrett Wright can change that dynamic. As hopefully we see more of Wright, and then we see Grimmer just for the first time all season this week.
Well, I think when talking about individual performances, you have to start with Chris Newstrom, who had an amazing 2 games for Tennessee Friday and Saturday. Not so much Sunday, but a career effort in Tennessee's loss to UCLA. Almost hit for the dang cycle. He was a double away. What a story that would have been. And he had a chance late. Goes 3 for 4 on the day. Had the homer. Just a massive day for Tennessee, and kind of jump-started that 6th inning rally for him. Or big inning. It wasn't really rally. Big inning for him. Follows it up Saturday with a nice day. And I think if he can be this, Ryan, like, this is it'll be such a big development if he can continue this, because it was kind of Ariel or Newstrom in the middle infield. Neither one are doing anything for you offensively. Newstrom was a weapon this weekend, and we know he has the talent to do so. We kind of figured Ariel had a cap ceiling, but maybe Newstrom has a pretty high ceiling this year, and he showed that this weekend. There's power there. There's ability to find gaps, so he can work good ABs. He doesn't strike out a ton, and this was definitely the biggest development for the fact that he can be, dangerous towards the bottom of the order for this team.
Yeah, I really think you said it best with that. Like, it wasn't just that he had like a nice weekend with some hits. Like, he hit the ball hard. It was 4 extra base hits, if I'm not mistaken, 2 doubles, a triple, and a home run. Like,
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, he almost hit for. He was a single short of the cycle on Friday, and he hit an RBI double in the 2nd inning on Saturday.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I think that's where, like, it was dynamic. I think that's where, in some senses, it felt like a tease, just from the standpoint of he kind of did fall off a cliff after that. It was his first at bat that he hit the double on Saturday.
Then nothing the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, he gets one more hit. I think he struck out 4 or 5 times, if I'm not mistaken.
He struck out 3 times after that.
Yeah, 3 times after that. No walks. No hit. He didn't get on base. He got on base one more time. So, more of a monitoring than anything, but certainly a flash that Tennessee needs. Tennessee needs some juice in the lineup, and he showed that. And you're right. Like, I don't. Ariel certainly doesn't give that. I don't really think Manny has shown that a whole lot to this point in the season as a middle infielder. So definitely a big, even though it wasn't throughout the weekend, I think still a big weekend from Chris Newstrom, and very notable what he did.
Well, he's capable of it, right? Like,
yeah,
that's the important part. I kept calling it a career day for him. Technically, he tied his career hits, but look, he scorched a midweek team last year. That doesn't count. Having a 3-hit day against UCLA, like almost hitting for the cycle, that's big time stuff. And it was a big moment. And he was leading the charge in Tennessee's comeback effort. So that he's capable of this. I don't know that Ariel or Manny could ever do something like that. So the fact that it was shown by Newstrom is positive development. Someone else I really wanted to talk about who did bear out in the numbers, but hit the ball a lot better and saw the ball a lot better, was Levi Clark. Provided the crucial sac fly in Saturday's game, did nothing against UCLA, but then has a double against Arizona State as well, and one against Virginia Tech that scores a run, roped one down the left field line, scored one of Tennessee's 3 runs. And in that Virginia Tech game, a 404-foot fly out straight away to center, which would have been a homer pretty much anywhere else. So Levi Clark, who looked really not good at all for the first, you know, 9 games of the year, striking out a lot behind pitches. He comes in Arlington and has, a really nice weekend in terms of when you watched him play. Didn't bear out in the numbers quite as much, certainly in the batting average, which still is low, but I feel a lot better about Levi Clark moving forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you sat here and said it first because I think people would probably roll their eyes if I did it because I've been such a Levi Clark fan and defender at this point in the season. Um, I think one strikeout over the course of the weekend, if I'm not mistaken. It just felt like he hit the ball hard a lot. And the double on Sunday was a huge one in a big spot to give Tennessee some breathing room against Virginia Tech, push the lead from 1 run to 2 runs. Uh, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like he had another fly out too that maybe would have been a homer, Lindsey Nelson, or at least one to the warning track or something like that.
He did have one to the warning track, I want to say Friday.
Okay.
It wasn't quite 404.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just shy of the warning track, but yes, a very well hit ball. In fact, most of the balls he put in play were really well hit, in my opinion. So
yeah, so to me felt positive. Felt like the process was better. I mean, he'd been chasing so much the first 2.5 weeks of the season. You see that chase rate down, fewer strikeouts. He's a talented guy. Once he's deciding, he's doing a better job of deciding which pitches to swing at and which pitches not to, which is kind of a silly thing to say because of how simple it is. I think he's going to be perfectly fine, and I think we saw that this weekend, and he hit the ball hard a lot, and it didn't always lead to results. But you see it with the hits that he had were extra base hits and one in a big moment and a sac fly. Like that was a good at bat to give Tennessee an insurance run late in the Arizona game. Like if I'm not mistaken, it was the first pitch because Derek Schaefer came in, former Vol.
yeah, he did
First
it
pitch, high fastball. He chases at it. It's like this. You just can't do that. But pass ball gets past the catcher. Runner goes to third, and it's like, all right, just one out. Put the ball. I think the infield was in, but put the ball in play. Hit something in the air to the outfield that can drive the run home, and that's exactly what he does. So, definitely a step in the right direction for Levi Clark this weekend, and feels like he could be on the cusp of kind of getting things going.
Yeah, I think I haven't studied Wright State's arms, but if he has a big weekend, really big week, in these next 5 games, if he can continue this momentum, people are going to get back on the hype train for him going into SEC play very easily because the talent's there. It's a guy everyone expected to be one of the better players this year. And look, Tennessee needs him to be a dude because Blaine Brown and Henry Ford, while they're very solid, and I think they'll easily hit, close to 350 this year. We'll see, but like in a good range, they're not going to be poor for Tennessee. Like for the most part, they're going to be guys Tennessee relies on, but they need someone like Levi Clark as well. It can't just be them two being consistent. So, speaking of Blaine Brown, Henry Ford hit over 300 on the weekend. They each had 2 big 2-out singles in that 4-run second for Tennessee against Arizona State. After Newstrom had gotten, caught at home trying to score on a wild pitch, which put Tennessee in a little bit of a precarious situation. But Ford and Brown kept the rally going, and they've kind of quietly been solid. Brown was bad against Kent State, but insanely hot against Nichols. But it was kind of just a quietly solid weekend for him. And then really for the whole season for Henry Ford, I think he's quietly just been really good. Just 350, solid.
I have a Henry Ford Tennessee baseball comp, and this is before your time, but I was thinking about it this morning. It reminds me a lot of Andre Lipsius. Like, just a really not very flashy, more of a contact hitter, more of a guy that it's like runner in scoring position. I got a ton of faith in him just hitting a single up the middle, but certainly in it for some power too. I think probably a little more athletic than Andre, but it's been a minute since I've watched Andre Lipsius play baseball. But that's a comp I had this weekend, and yeah, I think you put it really well. He hasn't done a bunch of stuff that just like makes your jaw drop or makes your eyes get wide, but he's right now, if it's a clutch spot, if it's 2 outs with a runner on second, he's the guy I want up more than anyone else for Tennessee because I feel confident that he's going to hit the ball hard.
Yeah, three RBIs for him on the weekends. Pull up what he's at on the season, but you're right. He's just The
And
experience, the talent, it's there. I don't know if he's gonna have an all SEC year for Tennessee or just be unbelievable, the best player on the team, but he's gonna be a solid option there in the top of the lineup and someone that will come through more times than not. And he works good at bats too. There's hardly ever a Henry Ford at bat where you're just like, what was that? But Blaine Brown, who I talked about, like I said, kind of a quietly good weekend for him. I have a comp for him, and I don't know if you'll agree with this. Sean Barrow's SID did as well, but kind of like Jordan Beck, where he can be just all
yeah,
world, unbelievable. Like this guy is going to make it happen, or he can have stretches where it's just nothing. And this weekend was, like I said, not insanely good, but wasn't bad at all. Of course, was solid. But I think he will have that type of season like Jordan Beck had for Tennessee. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I can see that. Just like the flashes of hit the ball further than anybody else on the team can, just annihilate a baseball, but then also have bad at bats where he chases and extends the strike zone and kind of I don't know, makes you want to pull your hair out, but leaves a little something to be desired. So yeah, I think that's solid. I'd be curious to see him more and more against better competition, but and especially this year. I mean, this is going to be his first year in the SEC, kind of his first go around. It's not like the American's terrible, but it's certainly not the highest level of college baseball. So yeah, I don't disagree with that comp.
Does hit into the shift a lot. Blaine
Yeah.
Brown hits into the shift quite a bit, so he may have to begin, hitting to the opposite side of the field a little more. As far as additional offensive notes, like, look, everyone else pretty much just struggled. Tyler Myatt didn't have the best weekend, but got a hit against UCLA, and here and there, got two on the weekends. Manny Marin and Ariel Antigua each had a hit. Ariel started a 2-out rally for Tennessee in the Virginia Tech game. That was the only game he, had an AB. And Jay Abernathy, Reese Chapman really struggled. Jay didn't get a hit, but did walk 5 times. So I want to emphasize that. Jay is, I think, overall been a good option for Tennessee to lead off because of his ability to get on base and how Tennessee's played small ball a couple of times here and there with him. But he's just not hitting the baseball. He didn't, at least this weekend, hit the baseball that well. And Reese Chapman has really cooled down since his blazing start against Nichols. So any other big takeaways here for you from, this other group of hitters?
Yeah, Reese had one fly out too that feels like would have maybe been off the wall or hit really hard in the gap. It was a good defensive play. I think was that on Saturday or Sunday? I'm blanking. You remember the play? He hit in the right center gap. I want to say it was Sunday. I'm pretty sure it was Sunday.
Okay.
And then Jay, yeah, I think that's the thing I would say, and I would need to. I should have gone through all his at bats and look through all of them to run the numbers to back this up. But I felt like he's seeing a lot of pitches, which is always something I like to see from a leadoff hitter, working along at bats. And now you don't want 6 strikeouts in a weekend, but that's kind of the cost of doing business. If you're going to have longer at bats, you're going to strike out more. But also, like you said, he had the walks to go along with it. So if a weekend where Jay Abernathy doesn't have a hit, if that can be like his down weekends and he's going to walk 5 times, like that's, you certainly can live with it. You don't want that all season, but you can live with it.
Yeah, I was looking at the UCLA game. He struck out his first 2 ABs, but both really long. Then works a long walk, foul out late. That wasn't good, but and then a long strikeout to start the night. So you're right. Like what I'm seeing is even when he struck out, he's seeing 6+ pitches every time, it seems, which is good. And I feel like he worked some of the better ABs on the team. And yeah, I have no real worries with Jay Abernathy. I don't think Tennessee should tinker with his spot in the lineup yet, and he's just kind of fine right now, and gets on base a lot. So the real worry to me is Manny, and if Reese is going to continue to cool off and just be what he was last year. Like if Tennessee has no juice towards the bottom of this lineup, if this is a one-off for Chris Newstrom, it's just going to be a rough stretch in this lineup for Tennessee more times than not. And that is what is going to plague this offense more than anything. And that has to be the big worry right now, is just the lack of juice towards the bottom of the order. We'll see how it ends up shaking out, but it just hasn't been that great so far.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Tyler Might's a guy that can provide some of that. To me, he felt like he really had a roller coaster weekend, some bad at bats early. I thought he had some good at bats in the Arizona State game, even if they didn't result in hits. And then I didn't think he had very good at bats against Virginia Tech on Sunday. So, and it's a big step up in competition from him for JUCO to what he's seeing now. Grimmer is also, I think, an X factor there when he gets back. I think the thing I would like to say or like to see, can Tennessee do, and it's such a fine line, can Tennessee do a better job of manufacturing some runs at times? Like, it just can't be these big innings or bust.
Yeah.
Like they need to be better at getting a leadoff runner
Like
and
Jay.
finding. Yeah, exactly. And now I say this, and then I thought the most frustrating part of the entire weekend was to me now objectively it was the sixth inning against UCLA when everything fell apart, right?
No,
That's
7th when it fell
seventh
apart.
inning. Yeah, sixth when it came back. That's objectively the most frustrating inning of the weekend. My most frustrating weekend in the inning was the second inning against Arizona State when they scored 4 runs. When you score 4 runs, you had a sack bunt, and you had a guy get out at home trying to – was it – I forget who it was.
Chris Newstrom.
It was Newstrom, yeah, on a wild pitch trying to score, and he's hesitant and gets a slow jump, and he gets thrown out at home, and you're facing a guy that can't find a strike zone, and when he does find a strike zone, he's throwing it right over the plate, and you're just killing him, and you just handed him 2 outs. So that's the fine line there. They tried to play a little bit of small ball. Manny Marin bunted, and then they tried to steal a run by being aggressive, and he got it out. And then I'm sitting here pulling my hair out. You need to score as many runs as you can when you have a chance with this offense, and you just handed them 2 outs and didn't make them earn it. So it's a fine line, and that's baseball for you. But that's something that I'll be curious to see.
It's really funny to go back and look at that inning because Reese leads it off with ball, and then hits a ball into center field for a single. So 3-pitch at bat. And then Tyler Mite and Chris Newstrom each crushed the first pitch of their at bats into the outfield for extra base hits. Stone Lawless 5-pitch walk. And then that is when Tennessee does Manny Marin sack bunt, and then Newstrom tries to go home on a wild pitch. Ill-advised. It's not on Elander. Like, Newstrom just went, and he got thrown out. It wasn't particularly close. So now it's 2 outs. Still, jaywalk, Ford and Brown single were able to, get more runs across. And even Levi Clark got hit by a pitch to load the bases. So Tennessee had another opportunity there, which Chapman flew out to end it. But yeah, it's funny you look at that. It could have been a lot more, it feels like, because of how much Linder was struggling for Arizona State. And then, he bounces back and kind of dominates Tennessee. So he got it together, but it felt like it could have been more, especially when you look at Tennessee stranded the bases loaded in the end.
And it's something that doesn't matter as much in a tournament like this. But if that's a weekend series, if it's a 3-game SEC series and it's Saturday, delivering a kill shot on the starting pitcher in the second inning is a huge plus to make them go to their bullpen earlier. I mean, an opponent's going to either have to start using a ton of their bullpen on Saturday, or you're going to have to essentially throw in the towel in that game. And then you can preserve some of your pitching for Sunday too. So that doesn't matter as much when you're playing a 1 game, but that's the type of thing Tony Vitello always talked about, how every inning, every at bat, it affects the entire weekend. It affects how the weekend is played. And that's something where the fact that he was able to get back into a groove, one, it made the game a lot closer. It gave Arizona State a chance to win. But even, in an SEC situation, Tennessee still wins that game. You would see it matter over the course of the weekend.
Right. Absolutely. You talked about Blake Grimmer, and I want to tie that into the defensive equation. Henry Ford struggled Friday, and he had struggled back-to-back, like 3 games in a row if you count just the weekends, with the 2 Kent State losses and the UCLA loss. So a lot of those runs scored against Tennessee were kind of because of him. And it was a little unfortunate for him, given the fact that Tennessee's offense has just been so bad that, they really kind of rear their head, given the significance and what was the difference in the game, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. But he bounces back, and I thought he played smooth third base Saturday and Sunday. It made some difficult plays look easy, and it looked to me like he had played third in the Nichols series and in the series opener against Kent State. So I really think there's been more games where Henry Ford has looked pretty good at third, and there's been where he's looked bad. It's just his mistakes have been magnified. If Henry Ford would have continued to struggle, and Tennessee would have been forced to make a change, I think Blake Grimmer would have a much easier path to playing time.
Yeah.
Because you can just play Newstrom at second and Grimmer at third, and then figure out what to do, Ford in the outfield or a DH, whatever you want to do. But I don't see any reason to move Ford off third right now. I got asked about it on the radio today. It seems to be a thing a lot of Tennessee fans are talking about. I don't think there's any reason to do it yet. And Josh Nylander is not going to do it until it is overwhelmingly obvious that it needs to happen, because he's going to be patient with Ford in his first year playing the position. And he's a coach that's going to back up his guys till the end. So I wouldn't expect to change anytime soon. And I honestly would be optimistic about Ford's defensive capabilities, because I think he's been pretty solid there more times than not, even though you've seen some backbreaking mistakes. So maybe it's kind of hard to say what I'm saying and wrap your head around that. But I just want people to have an open mind.
Yeah, the point I would make too is like the other look, there are options they could go to there that would be good defensively. I don't think there's a lot of options with this core 9 that they've landed on, or even with Grimmer, because I don't think Grimmer is great defensively. At least he hasn't been in the past. He's gotten better. Maybe he could be great this year. I don't know. But that's been the knock on him in the past. So I don't think of, we're talking about all these offensive issues, and I think most everybody would be struggling by talking about you got to put the best offensive lineup out there when you're struggling. I don't think you can hardly do that. Like, the other options are Grimmer and Tyler Myatt at third. If you're talking about good offensive lineups, you're going to have to bounce one of those guys from the lineup because if the alternative is moving Henry Ford to left field or DH, which is going to bounce Myatt from the lineup essentially. And then you're going to play Newstrom at third and then Manny at second. So, I guess you could put Henry Ford in right field and bounce Chapman from the lineup. But to your point about Josh Nylander's going to defend his guys, that's not a realistic possibility. At least we're not anywhere close to that being a realistic possibility. So, all that to say, there are better off defensive options at third base, but I think the options that are truly better, you're kind of shaking the boat. The options that are rolling with the guys that they seem to like at the plate right now and have trust in, I don't think any of those are really significantly better defensive options. I think you're better off just letting him play through some of his issues and try to get better as the year goes on.
Yep, I agree. Finley Bates, if he were to start for Tennessee, it'd pretty much only be at second base, you think? Or
he could play third. Yeah.
He
can play third. Yeah, he can play all the infield spots.
Also, wanted to make a note about Newstrom's good weekend, because he's so versatile defensively for them that I think as long as he's good on offense, like, he's a plus to always have because of all these different ways you could use him. I mean, they started him at first base, so he knew anything.
And he's good defensively. It's not like he can just capable of playing places. Like, he's a really good athlete and overall. I don't know if I would say he's truly good defensively at first base. I think that's probably the spot that I'd have the least faith in him at. But second base, third base, outfield, corner outfield, like, I think he'd be good at all those places and capable of playing short too.
Yeah. Well, 5 home games coming up for Tennessee baseball this week. We mentioned a tricky midweeker against ETSU taking place Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Our good friend Ryan Sylvia and coworker will be boots on the ground for that one. Then I believe we'll both be back in the stadium for Wednesday's game against Oakland. Yep. That's also at 4. 3-game series against Wright State this weekend. 6:30, 6, and 1 are your game times, all on SEC Network Plus, before Tennessee will begin SEC play the following weekend. Ryan, any final notes before we get out of here?
No, I think we've hit on everything.
All right. Well, that's Ryan Schumpert. Still no Twitter, so hopefully that'll happen eventually. But you can follow all of our updates at Rocky Top Insider. You can follow me at Jack Foster Media. And, of course, follow along with all Tennessee baseball coverage on RockyTopInsider.com, including live at-bat by at-bat update threads. Before Ryan, I'm Jack. We'll see you next time.